Hello friends and welcome to another video. Now this video is more a dissertation or trying to order all the elements that you can see in audio playback systems. And audio playback is an art and a science. And just as in science you have, for example, for formulas for amount of energy in a flying object, for example speed squared times the mass of the object. Once you know these things like mass and acceleration and so on, you can actually grab each of the components and work with them because they're now known quantities. And I'm trying to do a little bit the same with playback systems, because there's such a divergence of types of playback systems and what they're trying to accomplish. And most people that are sitting in one camp can't even consider that there are these other ones. So I want to clear that up. And also what it will do, I think, and we'll prove that at the end, I'll try to prove it to you at the end, that you very can plainly, just from a single comment, you can already read in which of these camps somebody is sitting. And therefore you know whether those comments are relevant to you or not, depending on what you want to accomplish. And I also want to refer to, a lot of you will also know the channel Real World Audio, and Janos created a very nice guide about how to approach your system. And but I think there's a couple of very fundamental choices that you need to make before you start building, constructing a system, and they're based on which playback and projection styles you want to have. And you can have multiple systems with different styles, so that's not a problem. It's not tied to you, it's tied to the system that what you're trying to achieve with the system. And so I'm going to lay that out in this video. And you'll be very good in spotting it after this, I promise. We're going to go through a couple of designers and see what they say about what they're trying to accomplish, some famous designers, and you'll quickly sort out with using the model that I have what they're in. And feel free if during this viewing this video you have some suggestions how to refine this model further. I'm most welcome. Also some thanks to Romy the Cat, because he filled in one blank with his video, high-end audio, absolute sound versus naturality versus expressivity, on his Romy the Cat's channel on YouTube. So he filled in a blank, and I'm sort of expanding on that idea a bit further in this video. So why also this thing? Because what I'm trying to assimilate is a lot of these questions into a holistic model. So if you look at what your audio system needs to accomplish, a lot of people like imaging and prioritize that in their system. So that's the where are artists on stage versus why are the artists on stage. Do you want to feel that, or you want to know this? Some people want bass lift in their system. So what are they trading? Accuracy for bass. You could have imaging versus you can trade some non-flat frequency response to actually enhance your imaging by elevating certain frequency regions that contain spatial information, and then you have better imaging, but you're not accurate. So those are trade-offs. We'll talk about this as well in a second, in more detail. A live venue usually has a very fuzzy image, if not mono. Most live gigs, by the way, that are amplified are all mono, because you want all people in the whole room that paid for their tickets, you want to have them the same experience, not the left channel experience and the right channel experience. But in modern stereo, high-end, or even anywhere, anything needs to be stereo for some reason. You want a live room versus a treated room with sound insulation and so on. Where do you want that? Where do you want it? It completely depends on the projection styles. We'll see that in a sec. Where do omnidirectional speakers versus imaging? High and low efficiency speakers. In Janos' system building guide, he says this is the first choice, but I think there's more choices that you need to attend before you even get to whether you want speakers with high efficiency, which allow low powered amps, but also allow lack of compression. And it's often something that is not being measured in consumer speakers, but compression definitely influences the sound. And there's questions that I, for example, have, which is why was my 4650 amp so good at portraying musical intent? I got more records, like I really felt what the artist was about with this amp than with any other amp. It was just very good at it. didn't have the most clarity, it wasn't the most highest bandwidth amp, but yet it was fantastic in sort of making you feel what somebody was doing on stage and what they expressed in their vocals was amazing. So, and I really liked that effect. So it also has a place. So let's go to my model. But before that, I want to say, just give an example of somebody that commented on some of the comments I gave online, and he said, and I wanted to just, it is not relevant really to the discussion, but it is typical. I said, I think ideally that the listening perspective where you are relative to the musicians is dependent on the recording. Fair enough. There's a fake or a real way of where they sit. You might be in the fifth row or on the stage or on some venue, or you might be there in the studio. The latter may make you think that the girl with the guitar is singing in front of you in your room, but you should always be there with more or less recording venue ambience presented. Yeah, fair enough, but I've got a mono system. I don't have a replay of the venue ambience. I hear it a little bit, but really, I'm in my system. I'm trying to accomplish far more. That I want my room to be filled with credible music that could also have been produced live in a similar way, and I want the frequency response throughout the room, because I don't sit in a single location. I optimize for everybody in the room, not just for myself, and that's my goal. So I don't care about perspectives, fifth row or in the studio. I just want the whole room to be filled with music. So, but this is almost inconceivable to another person that just thinks from an imaging perspective and how it needs to present itself. It's a very locked in way of looking at projection styles. And because 95% of people sit in a particular style, you might think there's nothing else, and they certainly can't understand your comments. But after you see this, I think you'll be able to spot all the different sort of philosophies very quickly in other people. So let's get into my model now. But before that, I'm forgetting the sequence. Before that, we're going to have a look at this. I want to just contrast this. A live performance versus the typical audiophile replay system. Typical audiophile system. Sharp miniature image. So you get some kind of image of people sitting between your speakers. They're not much larger than your speakers or the space that is held by a speaker. It's sort of a miniature of the original event. You go to a live performance, music is everywhere, very stuff. If at all, you get a very fuzzy stereo image. Close your eyes at any live gig. Do this. You'll be surprised. Or it's almost mono. Typical audiophile is singing on about soundstage depth, air around the instruments, the vocals, the presence, forwardness, depth of the soundstage. While in a live performance, you don't care about the depth of the soundstage. Like, nobody's even thinking about it. Never. It's about being there, about the involvement with the music, the feel, the atmosphere. How you're being moved by it, whether you're dancing or not. You know, one of my goals in my system is actually that it makes people or want to boogie. The typical audiophile cares about all kinds of measurements: THD, intermodulation distortion, signal noise, the waterfall graph, frequency response. Live performance, you don't care. You just walk around, you get different frequency response, you get different waterfall. Everything is different. Do you care? Well, if it's really bad, you care, but other than that, not. So that, you know, you should have some live. You have some. Obviously, you have some leeway, and this is not impeding the live performance unless it's really bad. That's my experience, at least. They talk about accuracy to the recording, but you have to realize that you in the mastering process, in the process of recording, you have all the colorations. Then you get the end mix, which they say is the artist intent, and then but they forget that after the final mix has been made, then there is the mastering. So the mastering, for example, for vinyl might be different for CD or digital streaming. And if your digital streaming is, for example, one of those high-end like Qobos or Tidal, and it's a high bitrate mix, and they charge you differently for the high bitrate versions, they want to make sure that the mastering for that, and I know that from engineers, mastering engineers, they're being asked by those streaming servers to make it sound different from the normal mix. So it sounds different. So there is obviously no accuracy to the real artist intent. it needs to sound different, and somehow this now becomes what the mastering engineer puts in and mixes the final mix. Now becomes your standard master. And there are plenty of people that just don't give a flying hoot about that. They'll create their own. And I think that's as much as a valid argument as saying, why is that person the authority on how something needs to sound? It's just very weird, isn't it? But that's my criticism about this approach. But, you know, it is valid, I think, as an approach to say, oh, you know what, if I measure my system, it should ding. But you better make sure that you use measurements that actually have some science behind them, that they're correlated to how we perceive music. Because THD, for example, or RMD or SM, they have very, very poor correlation to perceived audio quality. There's no science to back these statistics up. And yet, a lot of audiophiles will actually sort of take these into account. I also measure them, but for very different reasons, to see if something is wrong with my system. But the typical audiophile wants to minimize room influence, so that improves the imaging. In a live performance, you see that they often have to manage the venue reverb, so that's very important, so you're not slammed by the reverb. Typical audiophile optimizes the listening experience for one spot. Not me, but lots of them do. And in a live performance, everybody who paid the ticket needs to be served, so they optimize for the whole audience. And the premium seats might be better, but generally that's what they do. So very different. We have a complete schism, I would say. You know, I don't know how people reconcile this if you look at this logically, but freaking hell, there's such a different approach. Now we're getting into the meat of it. My model. So this is the model. What is it? So here we got the projection styles. So when you have this image centric, where the image is portrayed between the speakers basically, and yes, it's also outside or in the depth of the speakers, but it's limited in the general facility, is that they are here. So you see the image of these people being recreated. Janus from Real World Audio talks about the Muppet Show, the mini Muppet Show. You know, you see the Muppets sitting there, and it's an image-centric sort of way of putting the music to you, which doesn't exist live, but it exists with playback systems. So we're talking about playback styles. It's a playback style, it's valid. If you like it, go for it. You also have mono, but the opposite, I would say, are omnidirectional speakers, which try to recreate what it is to be at a live venue, and to have this in a live venue, or when live instruments broadcast not just towards you. They don't beam the music like image-centric speakers do. They beam it mostly towards you, and you don't want wall reflections and early reflections. So, but in a live performance, you get reflection. The bass usually gets you directly, and then all the high tones they get filtered out by the crowd. So they need to reach you by the ceiling and by indirect things, and that's omnidirectional speakers often simulate that effect at being at a live venue. So it's more, the sound is more broadcasted and distributed through the room. And here you like a live room, and here you like a more deadened room, because else it taints the image. Where here we're not so concerned with image, we're more concerned that it feels like a live gig. So this is more like you're at the live venue. So those are the projection styles. And then here, I'll leave this question in the middle, where versus why this artist is on stage, or why the orchestra is on stage. Here are the playback styles or philosophies. And Romy the Cat actually sort of calls this absolute sound. Janus also calls it absolute sound. I call it accuracy, because it's more about accuracy. And then the opposing force is almost naturality. I'll get to where, and this is what the Romy the Cat really verified, really clarified for me. And then you got that you wanted music to have a certain impact, whether that's a certain tone, or you wanted a state of being, or you want to be a tangible bass or something. It's where you did, or you want to have a more hyped image. So you're moving from accuracy more to impact. And you can have the same here. So those are the playback styles here, and these are the projection styles. So let's talk about these playback styles. So accuracy is where you want to attain certain metrics, and this is prevalent. 95% of the high end and reviewers, they're all living in this area. Now I found this a dead end path that just left me emotionally dead. There was just no connection with the music going along this path. I would get better and better spec decks and sort of, and it just never got to me. So I wanted to more go here, like how it impacted me, and so I moved completely in this direction, and now I think this is the only way. Romy the Cat calls it expressivity or creativity, and this is where you're saying, you know what, it's an art, it's a science. I'm looking for a certain effect and impact on me, and that's why I'm doing audio, and so this is not relevant. You could be tools, but you're trying to achieve this. Now, naturality is the opposite of attaining metrics. It is the avoidance of certain artifacts. So it's the negative version. Even though it feels positive to call it naturality, it's actually the negative approach of accuracy, where you try to do attainment. Naturality is about, I don't want to have a box coloration. I don't want to have a feel like it's insulation material that I listen to. So overdamped speakers with too much insulation, I hear them as being completely damp. They sound like dampening material to me. So it's not natural. And as you can see, this sort of relates a bit more with this, because if you want a realistic stereo image that you can experience live, that would be naturality. So this goes a bit more together. You see that these camps go together. Not necessarily, but they have their natural partners. Yeah, and you can maybe even say if I want to be impacted by the music, I'm only interested in why, and so I can actually go with mono because I'm not caring about why. I just want to focus on why. Yeah, that's a bit more my thinking, as invalid as it may be. So this is the naturality, and you know, you might want to avoid capacitor sound. You want to avoid the sound of electrolytics. You might want to avoid whatever you want to avoid. But it's sort of a negative attitude, even though that of course the result can be positive. But that's the approach here. So impact is more interesting in a way, because you had famous designers like Sakuma-san that mostly worked on tone, or bringing out a certain tone of a system, according to Lynn Olson at least. Lynn Olson also is very impactful. Is about the state of being that it induces in you. If I had my 264650 amp, which was very good in tracing the musical energy that went into the song, that you just feel the artist and the energy about it, that's the impact that, you know, has on me. And so I develop a system to have that impact on me and on about others that I see in the room. So that's my model. So, and once you sort of got this in your mind, you'll see, because next we're going to look at some famous designers and see what their goals are with designing their systems. You'll see very quickly where somebody falls in, and I think this is crucial to understand. Anybody that talks about audio is you have to make this thing. And the other thing that it can do for you, this model, I think, is that these are the basic choices to make before you even go into high efficiency or not. Because, for example, high efficiency actually has naturality. If you want to have non-compressing sound, so it's natural, it has the same dynamics as a live concert, you might want to have a high efficiency speaker to start with that has very low compression, so you can actually live in this area, right? So those are just examples to illustrate why you want it. Let's see how far we are. I have to keep the time in mind. So let's look at the designers. Here, Torsten Luis. Recreate the dynamics, tone and space of the original VAD. So if you keep this in this priority order, you can see he wants the dynamics, so it's probably high efficiency, tone, which is tonal accuracy, and the space, so then he wants imaging and ambience of the original event. So he wants, but the whole world is encapsulated in these couple of words. Peter Quartrup, bit more vague. I see equipment as the servant, as the music. Now you can never remove its influence of the audio equipment, but you can have it produce a believable, maybe natural, musically authentic. So it needs to have the impact of the musicality of that event. and a smaller representation of the original. So he talks about imaging then at last. So bit vaguer, but you can see all these elements out of that model that I presented. So I don't say my model is perfect, so if you have suggestions you should put them in the comments. Kondo, recreate the Toscanini performance he heard in 1953 at Carnegie Hall. I feel the point is recreating the master tape, but also to recreate, as you say, the live event, especially the sense of movement. So make of it as you will, but so some, you know, when I mentioned the immersion and the participation and the being there, and the sense of movement, so that's what he highlights a bit. But also he said, yeah, I need to be accurate to the source as well, but I do need these effects, the impacts on me. His assistant, who was translating, Masahiro Shinazaki, I can feel when I hear music live. It's a total energy or pressure that I feel with all of my skin. So he's talking more about the impact it has on him, the state of being that he gets in, that live music has on him, and he wants the playback to do the same. Let's see Earl Geddes. So he's in the accuracy camp. Let's look at his comments. Build a speaker which measures closest to the input signal using measurements with proven relevance to perceived audio quality by humans. So this is what a lot of people in the accuracy camp are not doing, using measurements with proven relevance to perceived audio quality by humans. Not by microphones, by humans. This is, I think, a very valid approach. Even though I would like his well, it's a very nice experience, probably his speakers, his Sama speakers, Earl Geddes, very prolific poster on DIY audio forums. But I think it's a very valid approach. This is the accuracy approach. He likes imaging. And let's just also have a quick look at his comment here. This is about omnidirectional versus high directivity, where you want that, and where you want wide directivity. So he said wide directivity will have many early reflections, which tends to yield the I am there perception of a live venue recording on live venue recordings. A very narrow directivity, like my speakers are designed for, will have very low early reflections and yields a very high they are here perception, especially on studio recordings. Live recordings have a mixed perception depending on the recording technique. So you can see here, he is very aware of this whole model that I just presented, and he's made his choice, but he knows where he's sitting and why you would do the other things. So this is somebody who has obviously a very targeted direction of development of his speakers, but you can see that the whole spectrum is very visible to him. Now, finally, Lynn Olson. As a last thing, I view eating, making love, daydreaming at sunset, piloting an airplane, dreaming, ecstatic states, or listening to music as discrete and separate states of consciousness. They're all real, they're all part of what makes us human. In this context, listening to music and being profoundly affected by it is a state of consciousness. I see it as real as a dream, a deep emotional experience, a kiss, or watching a puppy playing. It's all similarly real. From my perspective, a hi-fi system is a machine to induce a state of consciousness in a receptive listener. I nicknamed it an illusion engine some years back. Since the goal is a state of consciousness, the only thing that matters is whether it works or not. So that's another thing. And I thought my amp actually did that in some ways in sharing the intent of the artist. So it works or not. So that's the only thing that matters, that he works. And he's very known, this guy, for both the Ariel speaker, now also beyond Ariel, and a series of tube amplifiers, which are quite not revolutionary, but they were very new when they were presented. So yeah, that's the model. I hope this sort of gives you some tools and some things to consider before you even start a playback system, or to see maybe why your system at the moment is not doing so well, and also to quickly assess. And I think this is what I try to prove. I think with each of these designers, you now can sort of really quickly from these movements, you can place them in a box and say, in sort of, what are they trying? Where are they playing? What is their focus? You very quickly pick it up just from a comment or two. So, and I think once you do that, you can actually assess what people are saying in comments and whether they're trying to achieve it. Because if you're trying to achieve this while you're listening to comments from somebody sitting here, you're not gonna be satisfied. You're gonna be utterly disappointed, and it's because they're trying to they have a completely different mindset and goal with their playback system, and it's not wrong. It's just a different style that they're going for, that they're maybe happy with or not. That doesn't really matter, but I think the perspective of where you're sitting is extremely important. So yeah, and I think if you look at people like Roby the Cat or Janos from Real World Audio, like you know, place them somewhere. You can see what they're grappling with just by listening to their conversations. And I hope this model makes it a bit more clear. If not, well, sorry, probably then wasted your time. But I think it's an interesting model, and this is not the end of it, hopefully. And if you have some better suggestions, let me know. That's it for now. Thank you for watching my channel. We'll go back to pragmatic projects in the future, but I thought this would be a good sort of generally furthering the discussion video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and all the best, and until the next time. Bye bye.